So let's talk about gravity. That force that keeps our feet on the ground. But what if it wasn't quite so clingy? What if overnight gravity were only half as strong as it is right now? It sounds like a simple tweak, but it would change literally everything.
Just picture it for a second. You take a little hop and you just float. For a whole second, you hang in the air before gravity gently, almost reluctantly, pulls you back down.
Now, take that feeling and apply it to the entire world. Buildings wouldn't just be tall. They could soar twice as high, their tips disappearing into the clouds. Mountains would become these incredible, jagged giants, scraping the very edge of the atmosphere.
And life? Oh, life would get a serious upgrade. Animals could grow to sizes we've only ever dreamed of in myths and monster movies. So let's dive into what this strange but totally fascinating world would actually look like.
Okay, before we get to the giant spiders and sky-high cities, let's start small. Let's start with us. How would a half-gravity world literally reshape the human body?
Right, so take a look at this comparison. On the left, that's us. Pretty standard. But on the right, that's our half-G counterpart. The biggest difference you notice right away? We'd all be taller, a lot taller, averaging over 7 feet. Our skeletons wouldn't need to be so dense, and our muscles would adapt, becoming a bit weaker, yeah, but way more flexible.
And this is a really key point, which folks in online discussions have pointed out. As one Reddit user, Draco Druid, puts it, we'd become taller and thinner and lose some strength. But, and this is crucial, that's only compared to our gravity. To them, they'd feel perfectly strong for their world.
Okay, but here is where your brain has to do a little flip. You'd weigh half as much, sure, but your mass, the actual amount of stuff you're made of, would stay exactly the same. And that means your inertia, your resistance to being pushed around, doesn't change one bit.
And this shows you what that actually feels like day to day. Every step would have this amazing, springy quality, kind of like walking on the moon. Running would look less like pounding the pavement and more like a graceful glide. A little flip or a somersault, no big deal. But try and push a stalled car? Nope, that's going to be just as hard as it is today because you're still fighting all that mass.
So we're taller, we're more graceful. Let's expand that outwards. If that happens to us, what happens to the entire animal kingdom?
It all comes down to a fundamental rule of physics called the square-cube law. Now stick with me. All it really means is that as something gets bigger, its weight increases way, way faster than its strength. Here on Earth, that's the law that says an elephant can't be the size of a house. It would literally collapse under its own weight.
And you can see that effect right here. A 5-ton elephant on Earth suddenly has an effective weight of just 2.5 tons in this new world. The constraints of the square-cube law just got slashed in half. The biological rulebook for how big can you get has just been completely rewritten. This just opens the floodgates. We're talking about land animals that would dwarf the dinosaurs. Birds could soar on the slightest breeze, hardly ever needing to flap. Insects, well, they could grow to absolutely horrifying sizes. And towering over it all, trees could stretch hundreds of meters into the sky, turning the whole world into a vertical forest.
And look, this isn't just science fiction. We have proof that life is ridiculously good at adapting. On the International Space Station, they've shown that even in gravity weaker than our hypothetical world, these plant roots still figure out which way is down. Life finds a way.
So, the natural world is a forest of giants. What about our world? What kind of cities would we build when gravity is barely trying?
Oh man, architects would have a field day. With half the weight to worry about, skyscrapers could reach for miles, not just stories. We need way less material, which means we could build these incredibly light, delicate, almost impossible-looking structures.
But you know how it is with physics. For every awesome new possibility, there's always a weird little catch. In this case, a very slippery one.
This was explained perfectly by a user named Drawns on Stack Exchange. See, weight creates friction. It's what keeps your coffee mug from sliding off the table. If you cut the weight in half, you cut the friction in half. And all of a sudden, things that are perfectly stable here might just slide away.
A little bit of sliding is just an engineering problem, though. We could figure that out. But as we zoom out to the scale of the entire planet, we run into a much, much bigger danger. This amazing world is also an incredibly fragile one.
Because the real story here isn't about all the incredible things we would gain. It's about the one crucial thing we'd be in constant danger of losing forever. Our atmosphere, the air we breathe. See, Earth's gravity is like a cosmic anchor, holding that protective blanket of air down. If you weaken that anchor, the blanket starts to drift away. Over geologic time, our atmosphere would just leak into space, getting thinner and thinner. Our planet would be slowly suffocating.
Okay, so that's a pretty heavy downside, but let's end on the flip side of that coin. Let's end on maybe the most exciting possibility of all. From this fragile planet, we would have a wide-open gateway to the stars.
It all comes down to something called escape velocity. It's just the speed a rocket needs to hit to break free from a planet's gravitational pull. Here on Earth, that's a mind-boggling 11.2 kilometers per second. But in a half-gravity world, that number would be way, way lower.
And as user Jay Yelton points out, the result is that rockets would not need to be as bulky. And that's a huge understatement. Getting into space would become ridiculously cheap and easy. We could become a true spacefaring civilization, maybe centuries ahead of schedule.
So there you have it, a world of graceful giant people living in cities that touch the heavens, surrounded by colossal creatures. A world with an open door to the cosmos, but a world that's also slowly losing the very air from its lungs. It's fragile, it's untamed, it's magnificent. So the final question is, would you choose it?